Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman and I am your host. And my guests today are William Placek. He is the president of PFLAG Jersey Shore and the North Atlantic Regional Director. Welcome. Do you want me to call you Will or William?
Will is fine.
Okay, good. Welcome, Will.
Thank you.
And my other guest is Seth Rainess. He is a TEDx speaker, an author, and an educator. Actually, he is the author of this book, Real Talk for Teens, Jumpstart Guide to Gender Transitioning and Beyond. Welcome, Seth.
It's great to see you again.
Yes, we did a show sometime back. So I want to kind of talk to the audience about what we're doing here today, and then we can proceed. So, Will, you are a gay man, married with 2 children.
Correct.
And Will, you are a transgender, not Will, apologize,
That's okay, it's all good.
a transgender man.
Right.
So we want to talk about, things have changed. We did a show a number of years ago and things have changed, but some things have not changed. So I think just part of what disturbs people or has them kind of shrink into their stances is lack of familiarity and lack of information. So I kind of want to open it up, starting out with your stories, and then we're going to do another half hour. We're just going to do Q&A, what people would like to know, what they wouldn't like to know, and what you don't want to be asked. Good?
Certainly.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with you, Will, because you're closest to me. And so tell me your story. Growing up gay, that's for some people it's easier than others certain times, but tell me about your family and what your experience was.
Certainly. I started recognizing that something was different inside me when I was around 6 years old. I couldn't put a name to it, but I just knew that I was a little different than those around me. I was coming to understand this at the same time that my father had moved us to Indiana because he had decided to become a pastor. And so he moved us out there so he could go to a college to become a pastor. So I was raised in this environment where I was taught that, being gay was something that was quite evil, that would, people that are gay, that would go to hell. And so as I was growing up, I was really struggling inside with these feelings that didn't really coincide with what I was being taught.
I want to stop you here right now because, on the one hand, you're sitting here as an adult and, you're past that, but a little kid, like being told that they're evil, they're going to go to hell, and you're told this by your father, and then God, presumably. I mean, to me, that sounds like hell on earth.
It was. It was a tortured existence.
Yeah, oh my God.
Because as I was growing, we moved back to New Jersey when I was around 10 years old. And
did you have siblings?
I am one of 5 kids.
Okay, so did you talk to any of your siblings about it?
Not at the time, no.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand, I couldn't accept the fact that I was gay.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to speak to anyone. And so we moved back to New Jersey. He became the pastor of a church in Howell, where he is still the pastor of the church. Excuse me. And so as I was growing as a teenager, we were pretty much homeschooled or schooled in the basement of the church with other kids that
believed you were evil.
Yeah. We were taught that you weren't supposed to hang around with people of other beliefs. And so I was really tortured. And it became so bad that I was dealing with a significant amount of anxiety.
Did you ever consider suicide?
I considered suicide multiple times.
I can imagine.
And actually, I can tell you that I remember one evening where I was at a park and I had pretty much decided that I was going to slit my wrist. I didn't do it. I didn't do it because I feared for my soul. That's why I didn't do it. And I remember going home, and I remember just sitting in my bed sobbing. And my mother came in, and she was, rubbing my back, but she never asked what was wrong. And so it got worse to where I was getting up in the middle of the night, and I would go in to check in my parents' bedroom to make sure that they were still there, and that the second coming had happened, and I was left behind. I was so afraid that that was going to happen.
The word tortured sounds pretty accurate.
Absolutely.
Oh my God! And
How
you know
long ago
what?
was this? What decade are we talking about?
This was in the 90s.
The 90s? Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, when you think about it, and you look, you have children. You look at children. You look at them in the nursery. I mean,
Right.
they're just full of life and openness, and all they need is to be loved. And there you are, tortured.
Yes. And I was also, it was really difficult because in my heart I felt that my parents knew and that they would not help me because they didn't want to know, to real know. And so this continued on till I was around 17, 18 years old. And I had gotten to a point where I was physically ill. I just couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. So I decided that I had to talk to my father. So I went into his office one night after church on a Wednesday evening. I walked into his office and I said, "Dad, I need to speak to you." And then I walked back out. I locked myself in, you know. And so I waited a little while longer, and then I went back into his office and I said to him, "I have a problem." I said, "My problem is I'm attracted to men." I couldn't say the word gay. I haven't even at that point accepted that I was gay. I considered it a problem. And he did the pastorly thing. He opened his Bible, he read from different passages, and told me that God would really change me if I let him, that I could be healed. And he prayed with me and convinced me that to spend my time allowing God into my life and to change me. I left that night. I went and sat at that same park, crying and begging God, please fix me. The next Sunday, he brought me up in front of the church. He didn't say why, but that I was struggling with something. And people lined up to pray over me. And at that point, I really felt that, you know, okay, this is going to get better. I was uplifted. I was fully immersed in that church. I was the church pianist at the time. I, you know, did a lot of outreach with the church. So I really felt good about myself. And my mother never even addressed what I had told my father. So that was going well for almost a year until I met someone. And sparks flew. And I started dating a man. And
Were you living at home at this point?
No, I was living in my own apartment.
Okay.
Actually, I was living in an apartment. I had a house. I was in an apartment downstairs. My oldest sister, her husband, and my 2 nephews and my niece were living there. So
none of your siblings, you hadn't discussed it with your siblings?
I had not.
Okay.
So I first told, once I accepted that I was gay, I told my younger sister. And her first words were, "Oh my God, I'm so off the hook," for anything that she ever does. So, because, you know, we grew up, you know, when she, you know, kissed a boy and somebody saw, they reported to my father, you know.
Yes, so I can see. Yeah,
we had like
she's
100,
off the hook.
Yeah, we had 100 parents out there, so she was off the hook. And so I decided that I would call my mother over to my apartment and tell her. I had decided to leave the church because I really didn't want to cause problems for my father either. So I called my mother over to my apartment. We sat down. I still recall I was sitting in my chair with my little dachshund, and I told her that I'm leaving the church because I'm gay. And she said to me that she would pray that God would take me in my sleep that night.
What?
Because it would be better for me to live in heaven than to live on earth as a gay man.
That's something you don't forget.
I will never.
I can barely breathe hearing it.
Yeah. For a mother to wish death on her child.
Oh, it's the ultimate rejection.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is, we're not talking 1950s.
Right.
Or 60s. This is in the 90s.
Yeah.
This is not that long ago.
So I said to her that, what do you want for me to have through my life? I'm sitting here with my dog. Is that all you want for me? You have a family, you have children. And she just, that's not what she wanted for me. I couldn't live this life. It was too evil. So then apparently I told, after she left, I told my sister who lived upstairs. She was upset. And so I started, spending a lot of time at my boyfriend's apartment. And so I eventually said to my sister that, she didn't want me at the house with my boyfriend at all.
Your house?
Yes. Didn't even want him in his car in the driveway. Mm-hmm. And so one week I said to my sister, okay, I'm gonna come over and get the rest of my furniture and move out, and I'm gonna move in with my boyfriend. We decided to go on a Sunday while they were at church. And so I arrived there and my stuff was in the driveway.
What?
And so I packed up my stuff and I left.
So, okay, I'm going to fast forward a little, but
Sure.
I think what you've shared is so powerful, not only because you lived it, secondly, because you're on the other side of it in some way, in some significant way. Some of that never leaves you.
Correct.
But you override it or overcome it and create something brand new instead of it.
That's right.
But I think what I want people to hear is just, again, I don't want to vilify your parents, but I also want people to get how narrow-mindedness can destroy a human being and lead you to say the ugliest things you could possibly say to your children. So, I would like to hear more, but I also want to hear Seth's story. But, so tell me the kind of life that you've created, because before the show, just as we started, you said you wouldn't change any of it because who you are today came out of that.
Right.
And it's almost like the phoenix rising, And so how would you describe your life now?
I would describe my life as fulfilling, exciting.
You've accepted yourself?
I've accepted myself. Briefly, after I lived with my boyfriend for a short time, I still didn't accept myself. And
Yeah, I can imagine.
I convinced myself I wasn't healed because I didn't let God heal me. So I packed my stuff up and I moved out of the state. Didn't tell anybody for a year. And begging God to fix me.
Yeah, like
and
I'm
then,
not trying hard enough,
right.
so.
And then after that, I finally came to full acceptance. And
Thank God.
right. And once I came to full acceptance, everything in my life changed.
Yeah.
And I built this beautiful family around me of friends. I believe family is in your heart, not in your blood.
Yes. Yes.
But now I have 2 children.
Yeah.
And that was so important to me too, because I
Yeah.
was raised in a large family. And now I have a beautiful son, Jackson, who's 9 years old, and a energetic, exciting, and loving son, Grayson, who just turned 7 on Saturday.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say that I couldn't be happier.
That's extraordinary. And the thing is, you did that with the help of, who you surrounded yourself with. But ultimately, it was you who rose out of
Fought
the flames.
through that.
Yes, fought through it, came to the other side of it, because it could have gone any number of ways, including, slitting your wrists.
Right.
And including living a hateful life, hating yourself. So, and again, it gives you the opportunity because you're going to deal with challenges, because the world doesn't easily accept still, a gay family with, children, etc. But because of what you've come through, you're in the perfect place to do that.
And
Yeah.
that is what I believe my calling is.
Yeah.
I totally believe that I am meant to share my story and let families know. When I meet families who are struggling, I always let them know that you have choices to make. Nobody
Yes.
can make those choices for you. But I try to point out the consequences on either side, the good
Yeah.
or the bad.
Yeah.
And I can use my story as an example to let families know you need to lead with love.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Sure.
sharing that. Seth. So yours is a different story, but with probably the same kinds of challenges. So tell us your story.
It's different, but it's not. It's different because of my age. I mean, you know, I go back to the 50s and 60s. So, and that time, that's why I asked Will what decade this was, because, you know, advanced 40 years, and it's,
Yes.
you know, still. But I knew when I was younger, I'd say 7 or 8, I woke up on my 7th birthday, and I remember this. Certain things you remember in life that just stay with you. A lot of things I've forgotten, but I remember this. I woke up and I just said, today's my 7th birthday. It's in May, so the sun was outside. The guy was mowing the lawn, and I said, I'm hoping that I'm a boy. Right? And I remember that statement.
So biologically, you were born female.
Right. And so, you know, it intertwined all throughout my life, but we have to take a step back and say, okay, this is the 60s. Who was I going to talk to? They had the Dewey Decimal System in the library, and what was I looking for anyway, right?
You didn't even know the questions to ask.
Right, and as I had done my TEDx talk on this, I sat in front of Dr. John Money at Johns Hopkins. And he was kind of like the father of gender identity. Of course, it wasn't gender identity then. I don't even know what it was called, because they've changed the topic of gender dysphoria, everything. They're moving along. But the point of it was, when he showed me female and male anatomy and asked me if I knew what they were and which one I had and which one I wanted, I was smart enough at that age, like the age of 9 or 8 or whatever I was, it was around that, not to say what I had, because it was missing. Because, not that I know that now, but going back, there was no HIPAA, right? I mean,
yes.
So, you know, I was smart enough to know that if I said anything to him, it was coming back to my parents.
Right.
And it was interesting at that age. I just realized I'd have to carve my own life. And that's what I did until such time that I could find out, I guess, because of the internet and, you know, how you get information, way back, way into my 50s. Okay, that I could do that. I could transition. That it was really possible. That it wasn't some pie-eyed dream that I grew up with. Again, not knowing that could ever happen.
So, would you say that you were unhappy most of the time, or uncomfortable, or tortured, or?
I think I internalized it a lot. I didn't express it because where was I going to go with that? But I mean, it's never something that I was off of my mind, because you know how your mind can do that, right? So, but I lived a life the best I could.
As a female.
Right.
Your mother said something to you that was very compelling that you never forgot.
Right. Well, when I was about 18, I think I had come from maybe 18 or 19, my mother had said something. There was an incident, and I had a friend of mine, and she was in my room, and we weren't doing anything, but we closed the door, which was not allowed in my house. My father always thought kids would get locked in the bedroom and you keep your door open. So when my mother opened the door, I jumped, you know, just because it startled me. And so she assumed something was going on, and my mother had this face for like 2 days, and she just said to me, and this is 1971, and she said to me, "I'd rather you be pregnant than to be a lesbian." And that's something I never forgot, because I knew where I was. I mean, people call me a lesbian because I was a female presenting, right? And
you were attracted to females.
Females, but I'm still attracted to females. So now I'm straight. So, you know, go figure. You know, but it's so nothing. That's what I'm trying to say. Things don't really change. Certain things do, but some don't. And I never forgot that. And you know, I was with a woman for 20 years, and it was a good
living
part.
as a woman.
Yeah, it was a good part of my life. And I used to always say, you know, things would be better if I was a guy. You know, it would just be easier in the way we navigated life, and we didn't have to worry. I mean, because I lived through the times where, like, if you went into a gay bar, you waited outside, like, are there going to be policemen, or are there going to be people that are going to come in, and if you didn't have 3 articles of female clothing on, you could get arrested. You know, that's the way it was back then. And so I've watched, it's a long 50-year decade, but I mean years, but I've watched things really change for the better. And my purpose now is I've walked that walk, And
So at
who
what
better
point-
qualified to educate than me?
Yes, yes, absolutely. You lived both sides for a long time. So at what point did you decide to transition and do the surgery and whatever it takes?
Once I read a book by on becoming a visible man, and it was Jameson Green, who I know well. And once I read that book, I said, "Oh my God, that's my life." Except he had a baby, but that wasn't me. But the point was, the way he thought, the way he navigated through life was me. And I realized that there was the mirror, because see, today, like with YouTube and everything, people can mirror and they can see that I'm not alone. But now when you're spinning in your head at my age, through my decades of life, it's totally different, because you think something's wrong with you. And yet you're still trying to live your life around the perseveration that goes in your mind. And so when I read that book, it was immediate. I was like maybe 55 or 56, and I was like, why should I wait? I've waited my whole life. And so I did everything like within 3 years, because I could. I was old enough. Who was going to tell me I couldn't? I didn't. My parents had already gone, and what was my family going to say to me?
Yes.
You can't do that? I mean, I don't think so. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm already 55. So, and that's another different perspective than a child who's 8 or 10 that's still growing up and trusting their
Yes.
parents, and they have to
Yes.
go by what their parents say. It's different.
Did you have siblings?
I have a sister.
And growing up, was there any interaction or conversation about this?
Not at all.
Yeah. Well, it would be hard, considering you didn't even know what the vocabulary was
Well,
for it.
But I look back now at some photographs that I had. I always had a T-shirt and jeans on, and we had the jeans with the patches in them that were inside, so you couldn't wear them out, But I was always into sports. I was just into everything. And the one thing I can say that was very liberating for my father was he basically said to my mother, just let her do what she wants. And that's very liberating in the 60s. So
Yeah.
they let me do that.
At any point, actually.
And really, we just talked about this the other day, I'm a nonconformist. It's just who I am. It's not this that brought me there. Maybe it was because I had to, deal with things around me. I never really looked into it deeply, but I have a mind of my own, and I've spoken it. I've spoken that since I was, as they would say, knee-high to a grasshopper.
I think that's a piece of you.
Well, that's what I mean, And I just don't accept things that I see for face value. I have to question them and do that. And maybe that, I don't know, maybe it put me in a different direction to take me away from what my mind was thinking. But I just got out in front. My mother used to always say, it's like the army. Everybody's standing in the line, and they take a step backward, and there you are in front leading the gang. And that's the way I've always been.
Yeah. I think that served you well.
In some places, I think it did, but in other places, I think it was
Got you in trouble.
Yeah. But you know what? That's life. You figure it out and you move on.
And were your parents alive when you transitioned?
No.
Okay.
My father died like in 1990, so that's a long time ago. My mother's been gone for about 15 years, so about a year or two after she passed away. And it had nothing actually to do with that.
You weren't waiting for them to die.
No,
to do
and
this.
I separated from my ex, and I transitioned about 3 years later. It wasn't like immediately. Right. Nothing was really connected to anything.
Yes. So it wasn't a reaction to something.
The timing and the research, and I could do the research. I could look it up. I could say, is this right? Should I go this way? Should I go that way? And one of the things I'm sure Will has also gone through that we didn't discuss is that you lose friends along the way. I'm the same person, but it didn't matter. Right. Some people after 30 years.
You lose friends when you get divorced.
That's right. Hey, yeah. That's, like I always say, like some friends don't go from the next chapter into the next one. But you have to be prepared for that, especially people that you've known for 30, 40 years. You're like, what? Yes. But it's weird.
And I don't mean to make light of it.
No, but it's weird. It's just weird. But
it is.
People think they need to choose, or they have an opinion, and suddenly, like, I remember contacting my ex-husband's aunt and uncle, and I said, so I haven't heard from you since the divorce. So who was I to you all these years? Right. You talked about loving me, whatever. Or was it me as wife? Or, what happened? And it turns out they responded and they said, we're so sorry. We've just been really busy and whatever. And I got that, But yeah, it's it can feel really hurtful. But then those people aren't meant to go into the next chapter of your life with you.
And the one thing my mother always said to me is you have to grow alligator skin. And when we were kids, if you fought with the kid up the street, my mother would say, don't come in the house till you solve that problem, because she wasn't going to solve it for us. We had to learn to solve it ourselves. And because the world's a tough place. I don't care who you are, the world's a tough place. And you have to grow a little alligator skin.
Yeah. So since, there are two things I want to ask you before we complete this piece. Since your transition, how is your experience of life? Does it feel like, finally?
In the beginning, again, because we're in our head a lot, so you can always make up all the stories you want. It's a question of which ones you believe, right?
Yes.
So in the beginning, I wasn't sure. But I think, and as I always explain it, I changed the outside wrapper. This is the dress, right? And actually not too far from that, because when I told my family, it wasn't that far. I mean, I wore a suit without a tie, so we put the tie on. That was it. You know what I mean? And so now I have facial hair. But I think that I tried to practice going to a bar just to see if I would blend. I don't use the word passing because it's like trying to get over on somebody. It's blending. If you can blend into the world, I feel you're successful. And I always ask some friends and new friends that come upon me, have no clue. I don't go out in the street and say anything about it. The only time I will admit that I'm transgender is when I'm in the arenas to be able to speak about it. I don't think it's important to go meet somebody in a bar. Oh, hi, boy, my name is Seth and I'm transgender.
Right. Yes. So we're at the end of this first segment, but I want to mention again that you're both significant. Part of your life that's significant is PFLAG. And in the next segment, I want to talk about the meaning of that and the importance of that.
Certainly.
Meanwhile,
sure.
Thank you for this half hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.